Hello, Eric here. I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is the fly we're doing today, the PMD No Hackle Dun, is the single most effective dun pattern ever invented. It works. If they're taking duns, this fly will work. The bad news is it's also the single most difficult fly there is to tie correctly that exists, bar none. It's harder than full dress flies. It's the hardest fly I've ever done, for sure. That said, it can be accomplished, and the only thing that's really difficult once you learn some tricks with it is to get any kind of a high percentage of good ones. I bet on my best day, it's probably 500. Charlie Craven once told me in an email that if he had to make a living tying no hackles, he'd starve to death. And so would I. But it's a great challenge, and it will make you a better tyer. There's no two ways about it. I'm going to show this fly from a few angles. There are aspects of this fly that I feel are important. Number one, the wings are very upright, and that's important for visibility on the water. If you tie these sidewinder style as the original Swisher Richards flies were, they're really hard to see. Harrop and Lawson both developed this very upright way of doing them, and I like it very much. The wings also exhibit what I call the Dumbo ears effect, and they are concave when viewed from the front. And it's just a beautiful way of doing them. Here's a bottom view where you can really see what I'm talking about. And notice both wings exhibit this. It's hard to get the far wing to do this. And that's part of the challenge of this fly. Here's the far wing, and it's got a lot of Dumbo ears effect. It's very concave. It's got a beautiful upward sweep, and that's what I personally like. I'm using a Tiemco standard dry fly hook 100 number 16. The thread is very important. It needs to be waxed. Certainly waxed thread works it's much better for this, almost required as far as I'm concerned. This is Uni 8/0. And I wax it. I put even more wax on it. I like the thread to be well waxed. And it helps with, the wings are very slippery, and they will get pulled away from you if you're not careful. Here I've tied in a bundle of 6 to 8 hackle fibers on top of the hook. And I've pulled the tag end of the thread down on my side of the hook, locking the near fibers in place. I'm holding the far fibers up as I wrap back. Otherwise, they'll get pulled down with thread torque. And that's the kind of split I want to see. I'd like 90 degrees. The more split, the better. It just makes the fly float better. I'm going to take the thread all the way to the eye and then go back 5 turns on a 16. 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts me at about the 25% mark on the hook, and that's where I want to be. This is a left Mallard wing, and you notice the first primary has been pulled out, and I'm going to throw that away. I always do. And then about the next 4 or maybe 5, if your lucky feathers, are usable for this fly. And you will be cutting slips from individual feathers. in a second here. Yeah, here's a shot of the feathers. One from a left wing on the left and one from a right wing on the right. And I'm viewing these from the front of the feathers. The lower part of the very white stuff is not usable, and I'll pull that off. The very curved stuff on the bottom, it's very flimsy. It doesn't work well. And then I'll use, from there up, I'll use the next half of the feather. These are 2 slips I've cut that I will use for the, I'll hold them back to back, concave sides together, tips forward when I go to mount the wings. And here they are put together back to back so the tips flare out. I want them to be about as wide as the hook shank. The slips are straddling the hook. And what I'm doing here, and it's very difficult to see, I'll do this from another angle. It'll be a little easier, but not much. What I'm doing are very horizontal wraps around both slips. And these wraps increase in tension. And this, tying this fly successfully is all about thread tension. Right there, I looked at the far side of at the far wing. I wanted to make sure it had not gotten pulled under the shank. Thread torque will tend to pull that under the shank. And once that happens, you're pretty much done. I'm making a little collar out of the butts that I'm going to use to my advantage in this fly. I'm pulling the wings apart and trying to get them forward as much as I can and out of the way. Mike Lawson takes his thumb and jams it in there. Now, here I'm coming underneath the near wing. And the hard part about this is it's not as hard as if you use microfibbets, but if you use hackle, it's more difficult. You want to get the wing, but not the hackle, and pull it forward just slightly. Don't overdo this. It's medium tension at best. And here I'm going to try to shove this far wing forward. And I'm going to go around it and then pull forward in it. Split there a little bit. Don't worry about that. We'll marry that back. It'll be like it never happened. And I'm going to pull this forward, but again, you can't overdo this. The wing will collapse. You just want to get it as upright as you can get it. I'm working with the wings a little bit here. It's something that I saw Mike Lawson do in his video. I have both Harrop's and Lawson's videos. I know exactly how they tie these. And this is how they do it, with the exception of the tail. They do a dubbing ball back at the tail to split the hackle. Trying to keep these wings out of the way so this well-waxed thread doesn't get caught up in them. And all the wraps on this fly are very diagonal. Here I've dubbed the thread. I rather than show that, which is a little tedious, I'm going to work my way back here. I've stopped just short of the tails. I'm going to work my way back with the dubbing at first. Then I'll work my way forward. Now this requires wraps that go parallel with the wings, the backs of the wings, so that ideally you don't even want to touch these wings with the thread. the lower edges of the wings will get caught up in the dubbing. So you got to be very careful. Pull down and then forward. I think I can get one more jammed in here. And when you see that far wing get pulled forward like that, that's what you want. But don't overdo it. It's all a balancing act with this fly. Wrap a robust thorax/head on this fly. It's all about flotation. And I use Harrop's very rough dubbing with this rather than superfine. Now, Mike Lawson uses superfine, and his flies work beautifully. When I've tried to use superfine, the flies haven't floated as well as they do with this dubbing. So that's why I use this. But go for the superfine if you're comfortable with it. Just keep in mind, it's all about flotation. And here's the final fly, and I'm happy with this. Both lower edges of the wings, of both wings, extend down below the body. And that's what I want. Now next I'm going to show this from the top. So hopefully you can see a little better what I'm doing. I actually can't see the eye when I start. I'm in front of the eye a bit with the slips, and then I take a couple of really light taps backwards on the far side, and then a couple light taps on the near side, and a couple of little bit harder taps going to the front. And then I do that again, only with a little bit more force. And then I take vertical wraps, 4 vertical wraps, increasing in force. I don't want to overdo it because it'll pull the far wing underneath the hook, and that has happened here. Just a little bit, but it's happened. So I have a way of dealing with that sometimes saves the fly. So we're going to try to save this. And parts of this are going to be difficult to see because my hand's in the way. It's just where the camera is. There's not much I can do about it. Right now, all I'm doing is I'm splitting the feathers apart and working them forward, both. Next, I'm going to take the thread under the near wing and forward. The near feather has split, but that's not an issue. I know it's not because it happened on the upper part of the feather, and we'll just marry it back. It won't be a problem. All my wraps start just behind the eye. That way they're very diagonal and hopefully don't affect the wings, don't get into the wings at all. What I'm doing here is I'm reversing the thread so that I can go underneath the far wing with it. And disaster, I cut the thread. There's one little strand left. I think we can still save it. I'm going to put some new thread on, and notice I'm putting it on counterclockwise. And that's because I want to come up underneath the far wing. And also, I want that torque to bring the far wing my way, to get it out from under the hook. I'm trying to catch the wing and not the tails. Okay, now, remember our thread is reversed right now. So I'm going to reverse it back. Try not to cut it this time. That worked. Now what I'm doing here is I'm taking the lower edges of both wings and pushing them forward. It's best if you can work with just the lower edges. I want these out of the way. And I'm taking a very diagonal wrap starting behind the eye, very diagonal, going about halfway down the shank behind the wings, because if I don't do that, it affects the far wing. The whole name of the game here is to not affect the wings with whatever it is you're doing. And just about anything you do will tend to want to affect that. You don't ever want to see that far wing move if you can help it. And now I'm waxing the thread and I'm gonna dub it very finely, and I'll speed this up. I'm using a bulky dubbing, so I really need to try to get it as compact as I can. I like this dubbing though. It traps air. It also has some preen oil or something in it. I don't know. It floats like a dream though. I really like it. It's Harrop's Professional, and no, I don't work for Renee Harrop. You can, when you're wrapping this dubbing back, hold the wings together while you do it. That's never a bad idea. It'll tend to make them a little closer together and a little more upright. Renee Harrop does a 6-turn whip finish. I only do 3. And I think I may have saved this. We'll have a good look. Yeah, that far wing looks pretty good to me. Wings are more or less straight. So here's that final fly. That thread reversal that I typically do that when I tie this fly. It enables me to make the far wing look a little more like the near wing, and that was why I came up with that idea. But your mileage may vary, and neither Renee Harrop nor Mike Lawson do that. It's not necessarily the way they do it, that's for sure. This is a great fly. I hope you enjoy trying to tie it. If you're new to this fly, it's a real challenge. Start by buying 10 pairs of Mallard wings. And don't forget to have fun.